Tonight, 10 years on, New York pauses to remember the United States' darkest day. A minute's silence held at the Pentagon, where 184 people died. Moving tributes in Brisbane as firefighters and police remember their fallen colleagues. And the Gold Coast Sam Stosur slams her way into the US Open final.
This is 7 News with Sharyn Ghidella in Brisbane and McGrath in New York.
Good evening. It's early morning in New York on the 10th anniversary of the 9/11 terror attacks. McGrath is at Ground Zero and joins me live. And Kay, it's going to be a tough day there today.
Hello, Sharon. Yes, it will be a very difficult time for people right around the world. As you say, it's early, it's 4 a.m. and most New Yorkers are still asleep in their beds. But many thousands are expected to be drawn here to the World Trade Center site for today's ceremony. The mood here has been solemn, it's been reflective and, of course, very respectful. So many people have such different stories and different experiences.
Stuart Knox will forever be connected to Ground Zero. His twin brother Andrew died in the North Tower of the World Trade Center.
We know that Andrew would have wanted us to live life and experience New York the way that he did.
Stuart has returned to New York with 10 family members, including his parents. When the memorial is opened in just a few hours, the Adelaide school teacher will read Andrew's name out. America has already begun mourning its saddest day. Family members gathered at the field in Shanksville, Pennsylvania for the unveiling of the memorial for United Flight 93. A 2-metre granite wall bears the names of 40 passengers who fought back against the hijackers.
What happened above this Pennsylvania field ranks among the most courageous acts in American history.
In New York, a sombre service to remember the 343 firefighters who died. Young Patrick Lyons read a letter to the father he never met.
Dear Dad, I want you to know that Mommy is doing a great job of loving me and raising me in a happy home.
We all remember where we were that day.
This is all that remains of the World Trade Center, both towers gone.
Especially if you were here.
Over my right-hand shoulder, you can still see that the Twin Towers, or what's left of the Twin Towers, is still burning. If that young reporter looked overwhelmed, I don't mind admitting, like everybody else, I certainly was. This is where we were 10 years ago, and I remember vividly the firefighters, those who survived, walking out of the cloud of smoke covered in dust.
Daniel Finlay from Melbourne took these photos after the second plane flew over his head and struck the South Tower.
The massive explosion, the heat was very intense, it kind of knocked me back.
New York is in lockdown tonight, but this city refuses to let the threat of more terrorism stop them from remembering those who have already fallen victim. In New York, Mike Amor, 7 News.
Earlier, former US President George W. Bush led a moment's silence at the Pentagon, where 10 years ago today, American Airlines Flight 77 crashed, killing 184 people. Angela Cox is in Washington.
In just a few hours, survivors and relatives of those who died will gather here in what's being described as a low-key and private ceremony to mark the exact time Flight 77 crashed into the Pentagon. Among them will be the family of Yvonne Kennedy, the only Australian killed in the attack here. Former President George W. Bush laid a wreath at the site of the Pentagon attack. Others left flowers for some of the 184 victims. Simon Kennedy's mum was on a dream holiday and was about to head home when her flight crashed into the Pentagon.
She went out on a real high, you know. She went out a happy woman.
Still, he misses her every day and regrets lost moments.
I wish that we could drop the kids with Nana and say, there you go, and let her spoil them. You know, that's something that we're missing out on.
As a stand-up comic, Simon now uses laughs to spread a message of peace. Simon says his mum, a Red Cross volunteer for 25 years, would have condemned the backlash against the Muslim community since 9/11. Race Bayan was the victim of a revenge attack, shot in the eye for being Muslim. Remarkably, he tried to stop his attacker being executed.
He tried to take my life because of my Islamic faith,
and my Islamic faith taught me not to take his life.
In Washington, Simon met with American Muslim leader Imam Zaid Shakir to talk about a way forward.
It's easy to hate, it's easy to demonize, but we have hard work before us and to build bridges.
Simon Kennedy refuses to let terrorism define his life, and he's adamant the new terror threat won't overshadow this special anniversary of his mother's death.
And I don't think there's any reason to lock yourself in your house. You know, life goes on.
In Washington, Angela Cox, 7 News.
At least 89 people have been injured, including 50 American soldiers in an attack in Afghanistan, coinciding with the September 11 anniversary. Adrian Brown reports now from Kabul.
Kay, that attack is a further reminder that the people of Afghanistan are suffering the consequences of 9/11 10 years on. That atrocity was planned here in Afghanistan, and the war that followed continues. But ordinary Afghans say, despite the billions of dollars in aid that have poured into this country, there have been more losers than winners. No fanfare or ceremonies here, just another dangerous day in Kabul. Something Fawzia Kufi understands. The high-profile MP has survived 3 Taliban assassination attempts and says people don't feel safe and no longer have hope.
The biggest failure for the international community is that we don't have the security that they came for.
Up to 14,000 civilians have been killed in the past decade, most by the insurgents. The coalition insists it's bringing stability to Afghanistan, yet 10 years on, many people here remain unaware of the one event that brought foreign troops to Afghanistan in the first place. The iconic photo. Did he know what it was?
No.
Neither did he. Leading a patrol on the front line, 21-year-old Lieutenant Jack McCloy from Queensland. He also struggles to recall the atrocity that brought him to Afghanistan.
Do you remember that when you were 11?
No, I don't.
Years later, though, it spurred him to sign up.
The information comes to hand and the motivation to join the army and serve your country obviously increases throughout that time.
Fellow digger Sergeant Jason Lane applied for leave so he could be in New York tonight to remind himself of why he's here too.
I feel the need to witness the feelings and emotions that the 10th anniversary is going to bring about.
In Kabul, Adrian Brown, 7 News.
Well, back in Australia, 9/11 memorial services have been held across the country. People took part in prayers and sporting matches in honour of the thousands who were killed.
On a suburban Brisbane football ground, the last post sounded for the 370 police and fire officers who were killed in the September 11 attacks. Kylie Flynn lost some of her closest friends. She named her son after 2 colleagues who passed away.
My son is named Vincent Michael after my husband's 2 best friends who died.
In their memory, and the memory of so many others, the police and fire service football teams took to the field for the inaugural 9/11 memorial game.
It's a very special day. It's hard to believe that it's 10 years since that happened.
It's a very Australian way and a very Queensland way to commemorate such an awful event.
Today's commemorative match is the first since the September 11 attacks. Both the police and fire service say from now on it'll be a yearly event. Church services across the city were also reflective. This morning people paused to remember the lives lost.
And our hearts and prayers are with all whose lives have been affected by that event and the events that have followed.
The Prime Minister paid her respects at a public ceremony on the shore of Canberra's Lake Burleigh Griffin.
And so on this day, on behalf of millions of Australians, I can say this: we do not forget. We never forget.
Michael Scanlon, 7 News.
And Sharyn, 7 News will have full coverage of the September 11 commemorations across the US from 10:30 tonight. I'll be back a little later with more from Ground Zero.
All right, thanks, Kay. We'll see you soon. In other news,